Welcome to the Forward Marketing Podcast, the podcast that covers internet marketing strategies and leadership tactics to move your business forward. With your host, Joshua Jarvis. Welcome back to the Forward Marketing Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Joshua Jarvis, and today I'm going to do something a little different and cover just kind of news going on in the search space, if you will. I've got multiple things, so they probably don't take a whole, 15, 20 minutes to cover each single piece of news or each thing. So just going to go through that sort of with you guys today and hope that it adds a lot of value or at least gives you an idea of what's going on. So one of the things that kind of came up was this Mythbuster article by Rand Fishkin on SparkToro. He had left Moz, and that's his new startup. And so I thought it was really good that just some of the things that are going on, and I'm not going to go into the sort of the depth that, where he's sort of making a claim against Google. It seems like he's sort of anti-Google on this, but the myth is that 65% of the web searches happen on Google, and the data shows that it's actually more like 90%. And so when you break it down, almost 70% of all searches are done on Google, and then another 20% are done on Google Images, leaving 2.9% to be attributed to YouTube. Now, you may be thinking for a second, what does this have to do with anything? Well, for the longest time, YouTube has been said, oh, that's the second largest search engine, but really, Google Images has a lot more search than YouTube does. Now, the other thing that's kind of interesting is that when you look at the other competitors, Yahoo search is actually beating Bing as far as the search engine goes. And if you're curious, this actually shows that Amazon, Bing, and Yahoo are actually right behind YouTube in terms of search market share. So where do people go to search for things? It's Yahoo, Bing, and then Amazon in that order. Facebook being a sort of a distant fourth after that. And the only thing close to search engines on here is a search engine called DuckDuckGo, which I doubt any of you guys have used, but if you have, then you know. And they represent 0.36% of all searches done. And I just thought that was really interesting that the reality of it is that pretty much everyone is using Google. This is why it's so important. This is why we do the show, is that, more than 90% of people are using Google to do all their searches. So we need to understand it. And it also disproves the other myth that Amazon or Facebook or some other site is actually gaining on Google. And in fact, they did a study over 3 years to see what's happened. And really those numbers have stayed the same. So that's also pretty interesting when you look at that. So another one of the myths was that YouTube was the second largest one, and we just kind of covered that. And I just thought, wow, that's really interesting. Something else has happened, and again, it's sort of the anti-Google. And it's Rand that wrote this. He didn't write all of the news items for me today, but he has two, and he talks about the Google click-through rate. So when people do a search, you see the answers. He's saying that basically, like, that Google has changed so much of the algorithm that they're giving the answers away and sort of scraping your site and giving that content away. And so if you're a content creator, you're kind of getting the short end of the stick on this. And so he just sort of shows the examples of this, and then how much does it hurt? And believe it or not, it doesn't hurt as bad as we think it does, but it also is taking about 10% of the clicks away that we normally would get. So when someone does a search for something and Google gives them the answer, like I just did a search for the weather, and it gave me the answer, so I didn't have to click through weather.com. And so normally I would have had to click. Now, as a searcher, I'm excited about that. I don't have to do that. Google wins because I stay on Google for my answers, but weather.com does not win. They're losing on this, and as you sort of track the clicks are going down. Now, the winner of this whole game is going to be Google, because the only way to get your thing clicked on is to pay for it, and that's just something that's been a long time sort of coming. Is that as Google and these other companies, frankly, do the same thing, is that as they roll out these tools that are free, then they charge you, once they become popular, then they start charging you to get the same clicks that you were getting for free. So it's just kind of part of the whole cycle, if you will. But it's just kind of interesting to note that as you do searches and you get the answers, you're going to go, oh, wow, that's really convenient. But as a business owner, you're thinking, oh, man, right now I'm losing 10% of my clicks to Google giving away the answers for certain topics. So that's a big deal. You may not see it affect your business, but something to look at. So that was two of the updates from Rand, and I like to follow him. He's got a lot of great information. Now, kind of staying in the same vein of Google, we are talking about search after all. One of the number one things that small business owners haven't done, and they should be doing, is going onto googlemybusiness.com. I mean, not googlemybusiness.com, going to google.com/business and setting up their business. And what you'll notice is if you did it a long time ago, what you didn't notice is that they rolled out posts and they also rolled out descriptions. And now, recently, they updated something to where you can now follow businesses on Google Maps. And so why this is important for us to pay attention to is that if you're a service provider for, let's say your financial planner, that's probably not going to do a whole lot if someone follows you or doesn't follow you. But if you are a restaurant, for instance, then this is huge. If you are a place where people can get items like a store, this is huge. And the reason is because when someone follows you, Google takes that as takes that information and says, okay, this person's interested in this particular business, and then it curates content on your maps. So now when you go to Google Maps, it's going to say, hey, have you thought about these places? And they're going to be places that are sort of connected to the same business. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you get followed so that, let's say you're a restaurant owner and you can get your people to follow you on your Google My Business account, which should be something that you might do. So you could run the same kind of campaign that people used to run for Yelp and to get Google reviews. You would do the same thing here. You'd say, hey, go ahead and follow me. If you follow me, you get 5% off your dinner tonight. And then what's going to happen is that your business will now be sort of advertised as a part of sort of the things in that area to do for people who like that kind of restaurant. So let's say a real example of a restaurant. So let's say you're someone who lives in Florida. Let's say you live in Jacksonville and you start following a bunch of Italian restaurants. Well, then when you get to, let's say you get to a suburb of Atlanta and you want to go to an Italian restaurant, Google will suggest the ones that are being followed. So this is just a good example of the things that are going on with Google. So yeah, the follow button is new. And if you're not on Google My Business, just go to google.com/business and make sure you fill out all the information. We've got several episodes. I think we've done 2 or 3 episodes on this, and there's a guide on forwardmarketing.com. That's the number 4, rdmarketing.com. Just head on over there and get that if you're not on there. So following business is something new, and it's pretty exciting for businesses, like I said, that have like stores or something like that. Something else that's happened recently that we haven't covered is Google Plus shutting down. So for the longest time, Google Plus was something that you did as an SEO to hope that you got extra juice from it, but there wasn't really anything that was really useful there. There was a few communities, photography communities and whatnot, that were sort of there. And there was some other people. I think it was a guy, Kawasaki, was there a few times. And, you'd see some people using it sort of as a rebel sort of thing. It wasn't anything that had any sort of traction from what I could tell. And it was full of spam. So Google finally got rid of it. So this is another one of those things where, I don't know if you remember, the different Google products have come out that they've killed, but this is yet another one. And there was a guy on businessgrow.com, which wasn't a site I've ever heard of before, but I thought it was really kind of covered the interesting sort of 3 things that sort of caused this thing. And one of it was the switching costs. So when they came out with Google Plus, they didn't really have a whole lot other than, here's an alternative to Facebook. But the problem is that in order to go to Google Plus, I not only needed to go over there and sign up, which was a little bit of a barrier to entry, but it was also that I needed to have all my friends over there. And they didn't really have anything that, the only thing it had going for it was that it wasn't Facebook. And so there was no reason to switch. And I think that's kind of the big deal, right? That's kind of a takeaway. These are, like I said, these are the 3 lessons that we can sort of take away from, is that when we're offering an alternative service from a competitor, we've got to give a compelling reason to switch to us. It can't just be that we're different. That might work for like Comcast, where they're so awful and they're like the scum of the earth, basically. The company is, not the people who work there. That switching is, I'm just trying to get away from something that's sort of evil or bad. And that's really the only people who went to Google Plus was the people that hated Facebook. And so it didn't fill a gap. It wasn't Twitter. It wasn't LinkedIn. It wasn't Facebook. It was just kind of a social thing, and that was it. There was nothing there to attract you, and they really failed in that sense. And although the actual platform was much better, I think, than maybe not better than Facebook, but certainly better than a lot of the social experiences I've had online. And that kind of goes into the second part. No one wanted to switch because lesson 2 was there really was nothing significantly unique about Google Plus. It just kind of was just there. And I don't think anyone loves Google like it did when it first came out enough to switch a product just because they're not Apple. Like if Apple had done this, if it was Apple Plus, I almost feel like the wave of Apple followers would have joined this Apple Plus, but it wasn't. It was Google Plus, and so there really wasn't anything to draw there. There was nothing unique about it. There was, outside of sort of a clean design and sort of the technical abilities that it had, and the way and the ability to grow and be something really useful. It has all those. It has all the components, but it was nothing really unique about it. And like I said, that people didn't want to switch over to it. And finally, a rudderless brand, and I think that's true for a lot of Google things, is that Google doesn't have a whole lot of ways to. They've never been good. What am I trying to say here? They've never been good at marketing. And so Google Glass come out and failed. Google Plus came out. Finally, they admitted they failed. I'm trying to think. There was another thing that we used a long time ago, and I forgot the name of it, but it was a Google product, and it failed. And so, you learn from failures, and I think that they will. They certainly won't, and they shouldn't they shouldn't stop trying to win. But as someone who's a business owner looking at this, going, okay, not only did they, if you listen to last week's episode, not to sort of switch gears, where we talked about mission statements and having a why and all of that, then Google doesn't really have that. They don't really have a mission statement for Google Plus. They didn't have any sort of vision for it, so they didn't have anything unique. They didn't have a vision, and they didn't have a compelling reason for someone to switch. So, the real thing is that as much as we can hate on Google and say, "Oh, I hate Google" or whatever, like Rand maybe does, is that could it have worked? Absolutely. It was great. Had they brought in influencers, had they brought in an actual marketing campaign, had they given us a compelling reason to go there, was there content that we could only get there? Of course, when it came out, there was the early stages of social media. Now I think we're full on cycle on this, where you're seeing social media sort of break down back into groups, the same way that if you look at the cycles of the world, so to speak, the internet will sort of continue to churn. And so as we can churn, we'll have these sort of micro sites, these micro social media sites. And you're seeing a lot with Slack channels and Reddit becoming really popular, and groups and Facebook. I think that's when they came out, they didn't have all of that, but they had these groups to begin with. They had, your contacts, and they had the ability to do all this, and they failed. And I don't think they failed because of what they made. I think they made something good. I think they failed to execute on having an actual vision for this, a unique feature. Like, so that's why I like this article about that. So that's pretty much the news for the week as far as search goes that I found. And what I did is I looked all over the internet for sort of the most popular articles on search over the last month. So this is from October 2018. And like I said, the biggest thing is still when I look at businesses and I talk to businesses throughout the week, number one thing that most people are not doing as a small business is not getting on Google My Business. That is a free opportunity for now to get that. Yes, you will get telemarketing calls. Yes, you'll have to pay Google eventually for the visitors, but for now it's free and you should be on there. So anyway, hopefully this was helpful for you. If you really like this news kind of format where I'm just going to go through sort of the most popular articles and kind of highlight them for you, if you like that, send me an email at joshua@forwardmarketing.com. That's joshua@4rdmarketing.com. I would love to hear from you. If you are in another country, I would love to hear that as well. And I think we're over 5,000 downloads. Or we're getting really close. I think I looked at the numbers not too long ago, and just kind of excited to see how we're doing as far as the podcast growing. And so a lot of that is because you are sharing this with your friends, and you are giving me reviews and rating it on iTunes. And so if you've not done that, I would be so blessed, so honored to have you rate my podcast, subscribe to it, and maybe more importantly, share it with a friend. If it's something that's useful for you, then please share it. If it's not useful for you, you're like, I don't know if I want people knowing I listen to this, then send me an email. Help me improve it. Tell me what would make it better. Don't have a great day? Make it a great day.